everybody, Zane here for another installment of Beginner Bluegrass Guitar. I just want to start by saying a couple of people asked me what kind of guitar I was playing because it's a bit shiny with the reflection. It is a Tasman. Tasman are Australian design guitars, which I believe are manufactured in China. And this is the TA200DE model, which is a slope shoulder dreadnought, and it's got a little sort of pickup system in here. They're really affordable and they're amazing. And the people at Tasman were kind enough to send this guitar my way, and it's been great. It plays as well as my Martin. I got a HD28 and this one sounds as good. So today what I want to look at is some lead playing. Last three videos I've done have focused on playing rhythm, which is basically what you're going to be doing most of the time if you play bluegrass guitar. But every now and then you're going to have to take a solo. So one of the questions that I get asked quite a bit is, what scales do I use? And it's not as straightforward as there's a one-size-fits-all scale for everything. It's a bit of a hybrid of different things that you get in bluegrass music. So I thought I would just take you through and show you the shapes. We're just going to deal with G at the moment. Of course, any of the theory that is used in G can then be applied to all the other chords, but the fingerings for the scales are going to change. So the first one that you're going to get is straight G major is going to work. It's not the most interesting scale in the world, but all of the notes are going to fit perfectly. If that's your chord, it would be the fingering that I would use. You have your root note here. So remember, you can play below that. You could get cool going down to the sixth, which is an E. Then you get O, 2, 3 on the A, and then O, 2, 4 on the D string, then O, 2. You could go O, 2, 4 if you wanted, but you've got an open B string. And then 1, 3, then O, 2, 3. The next one you could get is a Mixolydian scale. A Mixolydian scale is the fifth mode of the modes, and in this key, a G Mixolydian is exactly the same as what we just played, except instead of playing an F sharp, a major 7th degree, we play a minor 7th degree, which would be an F natural. It's got a slightly bluesier sound, and it also has a bit more of a Scots-Irish sound. The bagpipes are made in the key of like A Mixolydian. So all of those fiddle tunes or piping tunes that you hear are most of the time modal or Mixolydian. So that would be, if we got G here, you go down to 1 if you're going beneath, then O. That's the note that changes, the F, then that changes. Next one after that is going to be your minor pentatonic scale. You don't hear the minor pentatonic played for long periods as it would in a blues song, but it definitely features. And I think Tony Rice, the great Tony Rice, is one of the biggest contributors to minor pentatonic blues licks. So that would be 1. If you go beneath it, 3. If you go beneath it, it will be 1. Then 1, 3. Of course, you often get that slide in bluegrass music, which we'll talk about. Then O, 3, O, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. You don't often play it like that. There'll be things you often do to it to get that. And then with all of these scales, they're often very heavily chromatically embellished. The use of a chromatic scale isn't often done in bluegrass music, but certain chromatic embellished notes are frequently used. So if we look at, let's just say I'm just going to play like a simple slow G groove. This is the kind of groove you get on a song like Walls of Time. The wind is blowing across the mountain. Normally this would be up in B, and down on the valleys way below. Now if I had to do a solo, I was going to play a couple of bars, give you an idea of the sort of licks I play. used all of those scales I talked about and lots of chromatic notes then, but I only stayed in the key of G. The last part I applied a C, but I didn't exclusively use any C scales. So essentially what I'm doing there, when you get to the resolution of a note, very often the resolution is going to be the tonic of a chord. It'll end up on a G in this case. But if you go down to the third, very often what you'll do is you'll play the flat third and then it goes up to the major third. That's when you hit it. Or you might get the flat 7, which is going to move up to the tonic. This stuff here that I was doing is the blues scale embellishment. There's that slide up to the third. Then I went up into actual good old faithful, like a Stevie Ray Vaughan box. But Tony Rice is the guy that does all of it. Sometimes you'll hit the 6, which would be, I think I played a lick like that. I've heard Brian Sutton do a lot of that. This lick, the G lick, that I talk about in the first lesson in this series, is the bluegrass equivalent of the word and, the, if, but. It's just, it can be a beginning, it can be an ending, it can be a lick in its own right. You hear it all the time, and you'll often find that most licks will have it in various different locations on the fingerboard, and it's just, it happens so frequently you don't even notice it. It's like that great line in the Blues Brothers when Jake says, "How often do the trains go by?" And Elwood says, "So often you don't even notice it." Well, it's the same thing that happens with this here. So what I would suggest you guys do is get out your phones and just record, I don't know, a minute of just a simple G groove, and you want to try and play just straight eighth notes. Most bluegrass music doesn't have a lot of rhythmic variation. It's usually just straight ahead. So that means, and it's not that repetitive. You don't get a lot of the bluesy. There's usually a lot of forward motion. Before something gets repeated, you usually have to play 2 or 3 other licks. So what you want to start getting used to is playing something, and how can you mutate it or morph it into something new through chromatic things. So you might have a lick, for example, that goes, it's a cool blues lick. It's not enough for bluegrass, but so you might go, so now I've turned it into a bit of a Mixolydian lick with a lot of chromatic notes. Then I might go bluesy again. And there's drama in that now, because there are notes that don't belong in the key of G major. So you hear that tension, you hear that resolution, but all along you know where it's going to end up. The gravitational pull from this G down to that G is so strong that the ear knows that, well, it hopes that everything is going to resolve perfectly, and it really just is up to the improviser to make that happen. So just see if you can come up with a couple of different licks. I'll do a few lessons, shorter lessons on just some cool little licks that you can come up with. It's when bluegrass music, improvising, when the chords change, you got to change with the chords. But before you get up to moving through different chord changes, just get solid on G. Once you're solid on G, get solid on C, D, and then you can start putting them together. It's not that hard. As I said in the first video, the hardest thing about it is playing really quickly. And that's something that we just all have to, you spend a lifetime working to get up to that level of just burning bluegrass tunes. But if you just sit there, the main thing that you'll have to address is a thing called harmonic rhythm, which has to do with the placement of strong notes on strong beats. I'll do a video on the concept of harmonic rhythm, but what that means is you might be playing a line that is in pure eighth notes. And so if you took the actual melody away and just clapped the rhythm, it's perfectly in time. But then when you put the notes to it, it sounds a bit strange. And the reason for that is that you're going to be placing either strong notes on weak beats or vice versa. And your ear will tell you this. It kind of sounds like you're swimming upstream or you're going against the current. And just playing a lot, particularly playing with other people, is a really good way to smoothen that out. But it all starts with just trying to generate some licks yourself. So if you've got any questions, please shoot me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Please hit subscribe. Find me on Instagram, the Rev Dr. Z, and I'm also on Facebook. Please join the Zane Banks page, and we got a bit of a fan forum, artist forum thing there. We talk about guitars and so forth. But thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you guys next time.